It's so hard to remain hopeful. It feels like I'm in an alternate.
What if everything you thought was a peaceful family? It's just a facade. What if the smiling dinners, the soft words, the Sunday confessions were only smoke carefully blown to hide the fire crawling underneath? 'Cause in the Brown household, the silence before the courtroom wasn't peace. It was strategy. It was positioning. It was the calm before the legal storm. And no one was more prepared to ride the lightning than Janelle. On the surface, everything seemed tolerable. Cameras rolled on another quiet day in the Brown family's post-polygamous saga. The family had shrunk. Hearts had hardened. But outwardly, there was no open war. Robyn tended to her children like a picture-perfect matriarch. Kody drifted, in and out. Still wearing the battered armor off, a man who once ruled over 4 wives, now whittled down to 1. But beneath the surface, legal documents sat unopened in drawers. Financial records, passwords, tax histories, all silently waiting to be weaponized. Kody believed he was safe. He believed Robyn's loyalty and his leftover control over Janelle's counts still gave him a foothold. He underestimated the quiet rage of a woman betrayed. Janelle wasn't loud, she wasn't theatrical like Christine, she wasn't tearful like Mary. She wasn't manipulative like Robyn. She was still, but in that stillness, there was calculation. For years, Janelle had been the family's financial backbone. The one who kept receipts, filed taxes, remembered which child needed what, and balanced the fantasy of one big family with cold math of real life. But now, that cold math had turned cruel. Kody and Robyn in what they called family. Decisions had helped drain Janelle's retirement. Her name had vanished from properties she once secured. Investments made for the family now only benefited Robyn's household. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft disguised as unity and Janelle. She had the records in her small, rented home. A far cry from the luxury Robyn lived in. Janelle began piecing together the puzzled old emails, voicemails, checks with fading ink, memos every bit of documentation she had once stored in good faith was now a lifeline, because when you've been erased from the very assets you helped build, paper becomes power. The realization came in waves. The LLCs Kody had registered left her name out. The loan applications bore Robyn's signature, but were backed by, end quote, family, end quote. Assets her own name, removed from a joint account with no notice. Janelle didn't cry. She printed, she documented, she made copies, then backups of those copies. Because one day, this wouldn't just be about hurt feelings. It would be about proof. Meanwhile, Kody believed he still had a handle on the situation. To him, Janelle was still reasonable. She would never stir public drama, never take him to court, never embarrass the family name. He leaned on the memory of their old dynamic, where she took the high road while he burned the bridge. He didn't see how much she had changed. He didn't realize that every time he laughed off her questions, or ignored her calls, or dismissed her children's concerns, she was hammering the final nails into the coffin of her patience. Robyn, ever the whisperer, told him not to worry. She wouldn't do that to us. Not Janelle. But Robyn forgot Janelle wasn't doing this to them. They'd already done it to her. Now she was just answering back. Friends close to Janelle began noticing the shift. Her tone was more direct. Her language had changed. She was no longer speaking in maybes. She was speaking in dates, dollar amounts, property titles. She started asking pointed legal questions, not emotional ones. How do you calculate equitable interest in a shared asset if your name was deliberate telemoved from the deed? If a man misrepresents shared income to a lender, is that considered fraud? What happens when a retirement fund is drained under false pretenses? These weren't idle questions. These were the sound of war drums, slow, steady, and growing louder. Perhaps the most heartbreaking detail of all was that the children were watching. Not just hers, but all of them. Logan, Savona, Gabriel, Garrison. They saw how their mother, the one who worked herself to the bone to hold the family together, was now being iced out of the very life she helped build. Garrison had already clashed with Kody in fiery arguments that played out on national television. Gabriel had stopped trying to be heard, and Savona, quiet like her mother, but not blind. Janelle knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about legacy. She couldn't let her children grow up believing silence was the right response to injustice. Then came the breaking point. One document. A simple title transfer Robyn had filed on the Arizona property, a transfer Janelle had not knowledge of her signature. Missing her approval, never asked, and yet the land once intended for the whole family was now under Robyn's control. Was it that the storm wasn't coming anymore? It was already here. And Janelle. She wasn't just going to weather it. She was going to own it. The court date hadn't been announced yet. The papers hadn't been served, but the battlefield had already been drawn. Kody and Robyn were still clinging to their version of reality, one where loyalty meant silence, and love meant sacrifice. But Janelle had learned that love without respect is just control, and silence. Silence was complicity. So she picked up the phone not to cry, not to plead, but to lawyer up. Because the calm had passed. Now came the lightning. The documents go public. The accusations become official. And the very foundation of the Brown family, finances, relationships, reputations, begins to crack under the weight of truth. This wasn't just a breakup anymore. This was a reckoning. And Janelle, she had receipts. What if the person you trusted most wasn't just lying to you, but secretly building a financial empire behind your back with your name, your labor, and your sacrifice as the foundation? That's what Janelle Brown discovered. Not through whispers, not through confrontation, but through cold, hard paperwork. Because secrets might smile at you at the dinner table, but documents, they never lie. Documents. After Christine's explosive testimony rattled the courtroom, you and number 39 D think the worst was over. But Christine was just the spark. The real inferno came when Janelle Brown stepped up, not to cry, not to accuse, but to prove. With trembling hands, but a steady voice. She submitted the one thing Kody and Robyn feared most: receipts. Not gossip, not speculation, but printed proof of a betrayal so deep it turned years of trust into ash. Janelle took the stand with the gravity of a woman who had waited too long to speak. Not theatrics. No emotion, just the weight of survival and silence behind every word. She brought out account statements, bank transfers, loan documents, her name, her signature stamped, cross debts she never took for herself. But where had the money gone? Into a web of LLCs that Robyn conveniently managed. Into properties that were supposed to be community assets. Into a dream home, Robyn's dream home, while Janelle and her children scraped by in a rental without heat one winter. The courtroom was still. Every eye was on the projector screen as scanned PDFs glowed in chilling detail. Janelle pointed to her signature, then paused. I trusted Kody. I didn't ask questions, 'cause he said this was for all of us. And that's the thing about betrayal. It never comes from enemies. It comes wrapped in phrases like, this is for the family. It's just temporary. We're building something greater. What they were building was Robyn's fortress. And Janelle. She was just laying the bricks. Let's talk about that house. Infamous Flagstaff mansion, custom-built 5 bedrooms, a private library, a sunroom, and a mortgage that mysteriously involved Janelle's credit. When questioned, Kody's response was almost comical if it weren't so cruel. She has a good credit score. It made sense at the time. At the time when Janelle was sharing groceries with her kids, when she was living out of an RV, and Robyn. She was posting Pinterest boards about crown moldings and farmhouse sinks. But it didn't stop at one house. No, Janelle's paperwork revealed multiple property acquisitions, some in Robyn's name, Some under LLCs, some shockingly under Kody's sons' names. Without their full knowledge, Janelle stated, "My son was used as a silent guarantor." He was 19. Imagine being a mother and realizing that not only were you fooled, but your children were collateral. That's the guilt Janelle carried, not just for herself, but for dragging her kids into a system of spiritual manipulation and financial abuse disguised as family. After her testimony, Christine reached out and held Janelle's hand in court. Two women once pitted against each other. As sister wives now stood shoulder to shoulder as survivors of the same storm, Christine whispered, "We were never crazy. We were just controlled." That moment wasn't just courtroom drama, it was historical for years. Fans watched the sister wives' dynamic shift and bend under Kody's authority. But in real time, the illusion was shattered, and in its place, to women reclaiming their voices, not as wives, not as rivals, but as truth-tellers. When Robyn took the stand, her face was red with emotion. She clutched tissues. She said she never asked for this house, that it was Kody's gift, that she wanted everyone to be happy, but her financial signatures were there. Her name was on the LLCs, her initials on withdrawal slips. The judge pressed her. "Are you saying you didn't know about the financial structure?" Robyn stammered. "I knew parts of it, but Kody handled most of it." Christine scoffed audibly. Janelle just looked down. "You can cry on the witness stand, you can clutch your pearls, but you can't cry away." A paper trail, and in this courtroom, the numbers spoke louder than the sobs. Under pressure, Kody's facade began to crumble. He tried to play the victim. It was hard managing everyone's finances. He snapped, "You try raising 18 kids and keeping everyone happy." But the records didn't lie. Private accounts, a hidden safe deposit box, cash withdrawals totaling over $300,000 in less than 2 years. And the cherry on top, a canceled family trust that was supposed to safeguard the wives and number 39. Assets quietly dissolved 3 years ago without full consent. The courtroom gasped. Janelle muttered, "I never signed that dissolution." Christine stood up, pointing directly at Kody. "You took everything and left us with nothing." Kody once bragged about being the head of the family, the spiritual leader, the wise patriarch. But what happens when the king is exposed as a conman? In a rare twist, statements from adult children were submitted. Logan, Janelle's eldest, wrote acquiescent, but powerful statement. "We were taught to trust Dad. We weren't told to check the bank. That was Mom's job, but she was always too tired. Now I understand why." Savannah, just 18, submitted photos of her mom boiling water on a camping stove in their RF during winter. "My mom gave up heat so Robyn could have chandeliers." 1 sentence. And yet, it thundered louder than any testimony. This wasn't just a courtroom, it was a graveyard of illusions. Each witness wasn't just testifying, they were burying the lie that had kept his family together. And as the gavel echoed in the room, it wasn't just legal judgment being passed. It was the haunting sound of justice finally catching up to a man who had long believed he was untouchable. But this story isn't over. Because what happens when the system that once silenced women begins to side with them? What happens when every receipt, every loan, every gift becomes evidence? We're about to find out. What if the quiet one had the loudest truth? For years, Janelle Brown played the role of the quiet stabilizer in the chaotic vortex of Kody's emotional hurricanes. She was the numbers person, the budget keeper, the silent soldier marching behind the Brown family's supposed dream of plural harmony. But what happened, Shun? The quiet one finally speaks and doesn't whisper, but roars. This wasn't just rebellion. This was a reckoning. The courtroom had barely recovered from Christine's revelations when Janelle stood up. Her face, stoic as ever, didn't betray the emotional storm gathering behind her eyes. But when she opened her mouth, the illusion of the Brown family shattered like glass. She didn't speak of jealousy or romantic betrayal. Her blows were colder. Financial betrayal. Lies wrapped in spreadsheets. Promises made with Kody's signature. And Robyn's influence, promises that vanished when it was time to cash them in. Follow the money and you'll find the betrayal. Janelle began detailing the labyrinth of shared accounts. Promises about land on Coyote Pass and investments that were supposed to benefit all the wives. But as it turns out, only one house had ever been built on that land. And only one wife had her name carved into the deed, Robyn Brown. She described how Kody convinced her to drain her savings to help finance the family's shared vision, a vision that suddenly centered around Robyn's dream home, while the rest were told to wait. And wait, and wait. Her children had lived in rentals, trailers, and constant instability, while Robyn's kids had bedrooms, security systems, and private tutors. It's all funded, Janelle claimed, with shared money. Love shouldn't come with the ledger. But in the Brown household, everything had a price. She wasn't just testifying against Kody, she was laying bare a system. A machine that took the emotional labor of multiple women and translated it into the comfort of one. And behind the controls stood Robyn, quiet, teary-eyed, but always benefiting. Kody sat there, mouth twitching, a man stripped of his last defenses. The man who had once preached about unity, love, and God's will was now exposed as someone who allegedized faith for financial control. Not just control over assets, but over destinies. When a man plays God, someone always ends up sacrificed. Janelle's testimony wasn't theatrical. She didn't cry, she didn't shout. But that only made it more devastating. She brought receipts, she presented documents, signatures, text messages, promises in writing from Kody about ownership that were never honored. She showed how Robyn's mortgage was paid off before any other wife even had a foundation poured. How her children had college funds, while others were told to trust the process. And then came the emotional gut punch. She told the court about Christmas, 1 December. Not long before the family's final fracturing, Janelle's children were told by Kody that he couldn't afford to fly out to see them, that they should understand times weirdo. Meanwhile, Robyn posted photos of Kody with her kids, opening presents in matching pajamas. Standing in front of a tree that touched the ceiling of their lavish new home. What do you say to your children when their father becomes someone else's Santa Claus? The courtroom didn't gasp. It didn't need to. The silence was heavier than any outburst. Janelle's strength wasn't in melodrama. It was in unflinching truth. She didn't try to destroy Kody. She just told the truth, and it did the job for her. Her closing words were a direct strike, not just at Kody, but at the entire lie the Brown family had sold to the world. We didn't lose our family because of plural marriage. We lost it because of favoritism, manipulation, and financial deceit disguised as love. Plural marriage didn't fail us. Kody did. Her statement echoed long after she left the stand. The judge, the lawyers, the audience, everyone was left reeling. Not just because of what was said, but because of who said it. Janelle, the rational one, the loyal one. The wife who never played emotional games. If even Shay had reached this level of betrayal, what did that say about the man who stood at the center of it all? It's behind the scenes, the fallout among the children, but the impact didn't stop in the courtroom. While Janelle's words echoed legally, they detonated emotionally through the Brown children, especially those from her side, Christine's. Some began posting vague but pointed messages on social media. Others refused to attend family gatherings where Robyn and Kody were present. The family text threads, once a chaotic but functioning thread of connection, reportedly fell silent, and the divide grew deeper. When mothers rise, children remember. And they choose sides. Gabriel, Janelle's son, allegedly wrote a journal entry that was leaked by a close source. In it, he described feeling like a son Kody once had, someone who existed in a memory, but no longer mattered. He recounted birthdays missed, milestones ignored. And the bitter irony of watching Robyn's children being paraded as the model family while he navigated therapy for abandonment. Janelle had not only exposed Kody legally, she had ripped open the emotional consequences of his choices. The empire Kody built was crumbling, and not quietly Robyn, sitting beside Kody through it all, wept quietly. But for some, those tears no longer held weight. For too long they had watched her sit in silence while Kody alienated one wife after another. Now, silence was no longer safety, it was complicity. Kody tried to defend himself. He claimed the financial decisions were, end quote, misunderstood, end quote, and that Robyn, end quote, needed stability, end quote, to raise the younger children, but every justification sounded more like a man trying to explain why his kingdom had only one queen. You can't call it unity when only one throne gets built. The cracks in Kody's narrative were no longer cracks, they were chasms. The courtroom had turned from a legal battleground into a confessional, not just of laws broken, but of lives fractured. As Janelle left the courtroom, she didn't speak to reporters. She didn't look back. But the world watching knew something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't about plural marriage anymore. This was about power, money, and the slow erosion of integrity. And now with Christine and Janelle united in truth, a new force had emerged, not of wives, but of warriors. Women who once shared a husband now shared a mission to expose him. She didn't just break their trust, she weaponized it. That was the line that made the courtroom go silent. The judge leaned in. Cameras zoomed. And for the first time in this legal circus, even Robyn Brown's mask of controlled calm began talk rack. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about manipulation. Betrayal and the crumbling of a carefully curated illusion. The walls Robyn had built so high around her narrative were now crumbling stone by stone. Her previous testimonies had painted her as the misunderstood outsider. The woman who hadn't ever wanted unity, peace, and family. But under cross-examination, that version of Robyn began to unravel. The prosecution asked her directly, "Mrs. Brown, can you confirm whether you opened a second LLC under your name while still legally tied to the Coyote Pass accounts?" Robyn froze. Her lips parted slightly, eyes darting between her legal team. It was a yes or no question. But the silence spoke louder. Her lawyer jumped in objection, badgering the witness. But the damage had already been done. The jurors took note. So did the public. From that moment, the tide turned. Robyn wasn't just a wife anymore. She became a suspect of deceit, financial manipulation, and family betrayal. Then came Janelle's second bombshell. She revealed that the family's joint business, My Sister Wife's Closet, had quietly funneled profits into an account only accessible by Robyn. That Robyn had suggested this setup in the name of streamlining operations. And that Kody had approved it without informing the other wives. But the real gut punch? Janelle had receipts, screenshots, email threads, internal bank transfers, all lining up with Robyn's periods of extravagant spending, even as other wives were living paycheck to paycheck. One email read, "Let's keep this between us. No need to overwhelm the others with accounting talk." Janelle and number 39. S voice cracked as she read that out loud. The betrayal was personal, visceral. She wasn't just fighting for financial justice. She was fighting for years of stolen peace, manipulated silence, and gaslighted trust. The courtroom was frozen. Kody wouldn't look at her. Robyn wiped away a tear, but it felt performative, hollow. Then Christine stood up with what the media would later dub the manipulation files. She had gathered messages, texts, and even handwritten notes, Robyn's way of playing one wife against another over the years. Things like, "I just think Janelle's being too aggressive about the land stuff. Maybe she's not thinking clearly." Or, "You should talk to Kody directly. I heard Mary's been stirring things again." Each message was subtle, but together they formed a pattern, a web of quiet sabotage. Robyn wasn't just passive-aggressively distancing the wives, she was shaping Kody's view of them, one whisper at a time. Christine concluded with a chilling final line. She didn't steal our money first. She stole our unity. Even the judge paused. One juror reportedly teared up. This wasn't just a financial scandal. Lana Morit had morphed into an emotional trial of betrayal and systemic manipulation within a so-called sacred marriage. Robyn's defense attempted a pivot claiming emotional trauma, confusion, miscommunication. Her lawyer said. She acted in good faith. These were administrative decisions, not acts of deception. But the opposing counsel had already anticipated it. They played a recorded phone call Robyn had made to a financial advisor, in which she explicitly stated, "I want it done discreetly. They don't need to know it's under my name." The courtroom gasped. It was the final nail. Robyn slumped in her chair, visibly shaken. Kody reached for her hand, but this time even helped unsure. This wasn't the Robyn he thought he married. Or maybe it always was, and he simply chosen not to see it. Outside the courtroom, chaos. Protesters, fans, critics. The hashtag #SisterWives scandal trended worldwide. TikTok sleuths began breaking down old episodes, finding subtle moments where Robyn seemed to manipulate scenes, cut others off, or redirect conversations. Clips went viral. Robyn crying about being the scapegoat. Now viewed through a different lens, the lens of premeditation. News anchors called it the ultimate fall from reality TV grace. Some compared her to modern-day con artists. Others claimed she was merely a product of a broken system. But one thing was clear. The court of public opinion had made up its mind long before the legal verdict ever would. In a family built on the illusion of spiritual harmony, it wasn't conflict that destroyed them. It was secrecy. And Robyn, the self-proclaimed peacemaker, had become the face of that secrecy. But the trial wasn't over yet. Because what came next was the final reckoning. In the final act of this gripping courtroom saga, the dust begins to settle, but not without leaving bent emotional wreckage. The audience has seen every twist, every betrayal, and every sobering truth. But now comes the moment everyone's been waiting for. The verdict. As Thegavel prepares to fall, the air inside the courtroom thickens with tension. Will justice be served? Or will the web of manipulation prove too tangled to untie? The answer will redefine everything for Kody, Janelle, Robyn, and for the future of the Brown family as we once knew it. The courtroom, after days of emotional unraveling, has grown colder. Not in temperature, but in spirit. The faces that once bore hope now look fatigued. The judge, now fully informed of the tangled financial and emotional dynamics, calls the room to order. Christine is seated beside Janelle, her hand lightly gripping hers, a show of silent solidarity. Their bond has only strengthened. Forged in the fires of betrayal and resilience, Robyn, still clinging to Kody's hand, refuses to meet Janelle's eyes. There's no more grandstanding, no more crocodile tears, only the quiet terror of impending judgment. Her carefully curated image has shattered, replaced by a portrait of entitlement, arrogance, and a trail of secrecy. Kody, once the voice of thunder in this family, sits eerily silent. His legal team tries to salvage what they can, but it, and number 39, it's clear. He's lost control not just of the courtroom, but of the narrative. The judge clears his throat. What follows is not just a verdict, but a commentarium mirror held up to the fractured morality of the Browns' plural experiment. This is not merely a financial dispute. This is a consequence of years of blurred boundaries, emotional manipulation, and misplaced power, the judge says. Voice steady but stern. There is sample evidence of deceit, concealment of assets, and misappropriation of funds, particularly in regard to property division and joint bank accounts. The words strike hard. Robyn blinks rapidly, her breath catching. Kody shifts uncomfortably in his seat. But it isn't just about money. More importantly, emotional harm inflicted on Ms. Janelle Brown due to prolonged financial control and misrepresentation of marital intentions warrants acknowledgement. This court finds that what took place here is a gross misuse of trust under the guise of spiritual command. This isn't just a legal takedown, it's a moral reckoning. The courtroom stills as the judge reads. The formal decision. Janelle is awarded full ownership of her portion of the Flagstaff property that had previously been entangled in Robyn's legal hold. Robyn is ordered to repay a portion of misused funds drawn from joint accounts. With interest. Kody is instructed to participate in mandatory financial transparency counseling as Part F. His ongoing custody and property negotiations with both Janelle and Christine. Additionally, the judge rules that past support Janelle had provided for Robyn's children must be reimbursed in part. Noting the unethical manner in which financials pansocial were redistributed within the family, as the verdict is read, aloud Robyn's face tightens, her lips pressing into a thin line. She doesn't cry this time. The performance has no place here. Kody mutters something inaudible under his breath, perhaps regret, but Janelle. She simply closes her eyes, inhales deeply, and smiles. It's not triumph, it's peace. As they leave the courtroom, cameras swarm the family. The world is watching. Janelle stands tall, flanked by Christine and her adult children. Their unity is their armor now. They have been mocked, minimized, and misled, but now they are unbreakable. Robyn walks a few steps behind, her once sympathetic aura evaporated. Without Kody shielding her, the glares of the public sting sharper. She tries to avoid the flashing cameras, but there's nowhere to hide anymore. Kody pauses outside the courthouse steps. The old charisma gone. His eyes scan the crowd, perhaps searching for someone to defend him, but no one steps forward. The patriarch has fallen, not just in court, but in the hearts of those he once led. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a reckoning, a public dismantling of a toxic system disguised as spiritual order. Janelle's journey from silenced wife to courtroom warrior is more than a victory for her. It's a message for countless others trapped in systems of quiet control. Christine, too, stands as a symbol of what happens when women choose truth over tradition, sisterhood over subservience. Robyn and Kody, once the self-proclaimed king and queen of the plural palace, now face a kingdom in ruins. And no amount of tears or twisted theology can rebuild what? Their manipulation destroyed. The judge's gavel may have delivered justice, but the real judgment was rendered long before in every quiet act of rebellion. Every whispered no more, and every step Janelle and Kristen now took toward freedom. This chapter ends in court, but the story of healing, power, and truth, that is just beginning.